So, welcome to Raw and Cooked Vegan, Executive Chef Susan Hunter.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Nice to have you. And I do want to spend a significant amount of time on your business and all the things you're doing now, but if you'll bear with me, can we kind of work our way up to that with a little bit of your history, especially, I like to start with how you were raised. Was your family, when you were growing up, very nutritionally conscious?
Nutritionally conscious only in that we had a really great garden. I actually grew up on a huge farm. My family had several farms, dairy cows. So I was a 4-H kid, and I was an FFA, and we had dairy cows, and we raised, but our gardens were fabulous.
What state did you grow up in, Susan?
I was raised in Pennsylvania.
Okay. All right. So would you characterize that as your diet kind of, you guys had probably fresh fruits and vegetables in the summer from the farm. Did you, and I guess you ate a lot of dairy. Was there a lot of meat, a lot of cooked meat?
Funnily enough, I was the kid, born of a dairy farmer that was lactose intolerant. So from an early age on, it was discovered that even though I was raised on a dairy farm, I actually could not eat any dairy products. So if anything, being lactose intolerant started me on the journey of finding alternatives for things, such as the ice creams. You know, I started with fruit sherbets when I was a kid. Mom would freeze fruits and then blend them up so that I could eat something cold and yummy too, while everybody else was eating ice cream. But the gardening was a big part of it, and from there I learned to can. So I'd make all my own pickles and beets and tomato sauces and salsas and everything else. So I was gardening and canning by the time I was 9, 10 years old. I actually had a very early love for cooking, so I took over cooking for the family. There's a very cute photo of me in existence. Definitely not vegan, but it shows me standing on a step stool in front of a stove flipping eggs when I was like 6 years old.
Wow.
So from an early age, I took over the cooking. Growing up on a dairy farm, and we had horses, you know, and all types of animals and rabbits, you know. So obviously there was a strong emphasis on eating meats that were homegrown. My father, you know, very much a hunter also, so, you know, he shot many deer every year, and so there was also venison, and of course there were home butchered pigs and everything else. When my turning point in making the connection of, you know, what started me on the path to being vegan, other than the whole lactose intolerant thing, is I was actually in charge of feeding the young calves when they were taken away from their moms. So when a cow has her calf, because for a dairy cow to produce milk day in all year long, they have to be lactating, which means they have to have had a baby. And for them to have a baby means that they're going to produce milk. And then they have to be bred back immediately. And then they produce milk all the way up until what they call as freshening, which is the month before they actually deliver their next calf.
Now, Susan, let me ask you something on that. Is there no phenomena whereby if something continues suckling the mother cow that it'll keep producing milk, or there has to be gestation of a calf to initiate that process?
There has to be gestation. Cows will dry up. So it's called going dry. Before they're produce their next calf to actually continue to produce milk for the next year, they dry. They have a month-long drying up period where they're removed from the milking line before they have their next calf. And then they have a new calf, they're freshened, you know, we milked them and took the colostrum, and we fed the baby calf the colostrum the first couple days, but we bottle fed them. And I was actually the one in charge. So from the time I was 7, 8 years old, I was the one who was bottle feeding these calves.
Wow.
Yeah, so I got really close with him, and then, like I said, when I was 12 years old, I fell in love with a calf. One of the calves got out. It was a little bull calf, and if you know anything about the dairy industry, bulls don't live very long.
Huh.
This bull calf got out of his pen, and he ended up in the horse barn. And so he was curled up in a pile of straw, sleeping in the horse barn. And I found him, and I petted him, and I held him, and I thought he was so cute. And then I'd go to ride the horses, and he'd run alongside because he wanted his mommy. And so I'd bottle feed him, and I never put him back in his pen. I just bottle fed him over in the horse barn. Well, of course, to a 12-year-old kid, that's the new pet. But bull calves really serve no purpose on a dairy farm. So somewhere around the 30-day mark, my dad always hauled them off to auction. Well, I really liked this bull calf, and I kind of hid it in the horse barn for a while. And I'm not saying my dad missed it particularly, but he indulged me for the rest of the summer. And this calf, this little bull calf, I named him Fat Face. He'd run around the horse. He'd run around the horse barn, and he was like a dog. He came when I called, and he looked for me, and he wagged his precious little tail, and he was just such a happy little boy, and I fed him, and he started to grow up. The next thing I know, my dad puts him in a truck and hauls him off to auction.
Oh, man.
And it broke my heart. And by that time, you have to remember, I was in 4-H, so I was showing calves at county fairs. I was in 4-H by the time I was 9 years old. Is when 4-H, that's the youngest you can be. So I joined 4-H, and I was showing cows, and I was showing horses in 4-H. So I was really and of course the gardening and all that stuff. So I was really heavily involved in the 4-H program. But after the age of 13 or 14, I never showed cows again because I started really questioning everything we were doing. Fat Face was kind of my defining moment. I told my dad he was a monster, and I think I didn't talk to him for 3 months. I did my chores.
Let me ask you, Susan. Did you know what was likely to happen when that bull was auctioned? Is the likely outcome for that bull to be sent to slaughter, or might be raised for breeding purposes, or what would be the likely outcome?
Okay, dairy cows are they're all pretty, I'd say 99.9% of all dairy cows now are artificially inseminated. So farmers buy semen from bulls that are proven producer, from bloodlines that are proven producers. So they buy frozen shipped semen, and they artificially inseminate the cow. So there is no point of having a bull cow on a farm for any reason, because it's not proven. The farmers want to buy semen from a proven producer. Some farms will keep a bull calf maybe for the first year, maybe 2 years, and let it breed the first-time heifers, just to make sure that they can, get pregnant and have their first calf. So a lot of times dairy farms will run one bull, and we've always ran one bull with the spring heifers to let them get bred that first time, and then they produced their first calf, and then they went into the milking line, and from that point on they were artificially inseminated. So we actually did always have a bull calf, or bull cow then once it grew up. But generally, no. When a bull calf at 30 days goes to auction, it's either sold immediately for veal at that point, or put into a box to be fed milk for another month to be sold for veal. At the most, it's raised as a feeder calf for up to 6 months, and then slaughtered at 6 months. So
Okay.
yes, I knew prior to falling in love with Fat Face that Fat Face's fate was going to be a slaughterhouse. It's just that in my 12-year-old head, I thought maybe I could keep him for a pet forever.
Yeah.
Was not to be.
Now, this is really interesting because of course your family is immersed in farming and just thinks this is all totally natural. And I guess you had brothers
Right.
and sisters who are working on the farm. So when you had this epiphany and you thought your dad was a monster, how did you end up resolving that? Because I assumed your father kept right on farming. So tell us a little
Yeah,
bit about.
I don't think he really noticed. I think it was more of a traumatic event for me, and I don't really think he noticed because there were cows to milk and fields to work and things to do, and I don't remember it being any great thing where other than that day that my calf went to auction, I said, "You're a monster. I can't believe you did that." And then I snubbed him for 3 months, and I'm not sure entirely that he even noticed. Um, Interestingly enough, I have a brother who's also now a vegan, and my sister is a veterinarian.
Uh-huh.
So, it makes, I wish she were vegan. She's very close to being vegan. She certainly embraces a much more healthy eating, but being a veterinarian and with her lifestyle and on the go, sometimes she grabs things that are more quick and easy than I would wish. However, she really makes an effort to eat a plant-based diet. So I call her a plant-based dieter. She's probably 90% plant-based.
Wow. All right, let me ask you, so you had this epiphany at 13, and did that immediately translate into you abstaining from eating meat, or did that take a while to manifest?
No, it immediately, I definitely quit eating red meat, anything from a cow. There was a joke for a while that I was a Hindu because cows were suddenly sacred. So I remember getting some teasing about that.
Yeah.
About that time, my brother actually quit eating pork because of some things that he had read. He was a little bit older than I am, and he read some things about pork. So he quit eating pork, and so I kind of quit eating pork also following him. I don't know specifically at what point he gave up cow meat then, but so somewhere between 13 and 15, I gave up all meat with the exception of, well, I don't even like to call it, and some of the things that people get into with being vegetarian or being vegan, some people say, well, I'm a vegetarian, but I eat fish. Well, then you're not a vegetarian, you're a pescatarian.
Right.
Well, I was a really odd sort of pescatarian. I was a pescatarian who did not eat fish, but ate like oysters and clams and so shellfish.
Yeah.
So I don't even like to call myself a pescatarian because that gives the illusion that I ate fish, and I didn't eat fish. But so by the time I was 15, I ate shellfish and eggs only. And I used to joke and say the reason I could eat shellfish is because, lobsters and crabs were like the cockroaches of the sea. And, if I was going to squish a cockroach, I'd be okay squishing a lobster. Obviously, I have since changed my viewpoint on all of that. But, yes, by the time I was 15, I was a very small part of being a pescatarian in that I ate shellfish only, and then I was an ovo-vegetarian in that I ate eggs.
Gotcha. Well, you raise a point that I sometimes think about. I mean, a lot of vegans become so, myself included, so energetically supportive of the vegan lifestyle. But I think it's fair to give some credit to people who are vegetarian, who are pescatarian, who are somewhere on the scale of becoming conscious. So I think those are all good things.
Well, you have to remember, too, this was I was 13 in 1979, to age myself here. So in 1979, I was 13 years old. I didn't even know the word vegetarian existed. It's not like we have the internet. I lived on a farm in western Pennsylvania, surrounded by other dairy farms, surrounded by 4-H'ers. I didn't know there was such a thing as a vegetarian. To me, dietary restriction was tied into religion, like the jokes about me being Hindu, and then when my brother and I eating pork, suddenly we were Jewish, So I used to joke that I was like a lactose intolerant Hindu Jew, So exactly, because I didn't know the words. We're talking 1979. I didn't know those words. We weren't anywhere near a city or, places that had those words. I never heard the word vegetarian until I went off to college. I was 17 years old before I knew there was even such a thing as a vegetarian.
It's really interesting, Susan, because I've interviewed other folks like yourself, and I find this fascinating that some folks at a pretty young age, there's this dawning realization, and and there's not necessarily any outside influence that brings it on. It's just the inner recognition that I'm not going to do this anymore. I think that's inspiring and powerful.
Yes.
So now,
I think made it more real for me too is that nobody told me to do this, or I wasn't influenced. Like I said, the joke was I was a lactose intolerant Hindu Jew. That was my eating style until I had the new vocabulary words to plug into what I was. When I went to college, I realized I was a ovo-vegetarian. I learned that specific thing because I did not drink any milk or eat dairy products. It was just kind of a gradual thing over time of figuring out how I fit into the grand scheme of eating things.
Yeah. Now, how did this go down in the family? Because by this time, when you were 13, I assume you started doing a lot of the cooking. Did you continue cooking for the rest of the family the way they were accustomed to eating, and then you just fed yourself a vegetarian? Okay.
And that's what made it really convenient for me to do the cooking. So by the time I was 13, I was doing the cooking because I could cook the meat separately, and then I could do the rice and beans and all the other stuff over here, and then I could get a dish of what I wanted to eat, and then at the last minute throw the meat into the dish, mix it all together, finish cooking it off, and give it to everybody else.
Well, and I like this point. I like this point because it means you didn't at the time you made this transition personally, you didn't at that time decide I'm going to impose my personal inclination on the rest of the family. So you basically, out of love or for whatever reason, you continued to serve food to the family the way they were accustomed to eating it, and you didn't try to convert people or anything like that.
Right, exactly. And selfishly, why I kept eating eggs for so long is because I love to bake. I love to make cookies and pies and cakes and everything else. So eggs were such a big part. And again, at that age, we're talking 1979 to 1981, there weren't Whole Food markets or natural grocers or Amazon to order things on. There were products. I mean, nobody told me how to replace eggs.
Yeah.
It took a long time for me to start. And then afterwards, I do have to state that when I went to culinary school, I did, in fact, because I was required to cook all those meats and everything else, I was also required to taste them. And I used to annoy the teachers, the instructors, chefs so much because I would chew it up and I would spit it out. And I'd be like, I don't have to swallow it. I just have to get that flavor and I have to cook it. So it was actually rather good because back then it's not like there were plant-based cooking programs or plant-based culinary programs that one could go to if wanted to be trained as a chef. And honestly, the ones that exist now, while they're wonderful, I've met a couple of them and they are wonderful people, don't get me wrong, but they lack a lot of the basic culinary knowledge that, like, they can't take an old cookbook, look at all the non-vegan ingredients and know in their mind how things should taste and be able to switch it over to vegan. So there's a lot of things that are taught in culinary schools that even though they include dead animals and stolen animal products, I wouldn't trade that education and that background for anything. Obviously now, if I were coming up, if I were 20 years old now, I would go to a plant-based cooking culinary school instruction because it does exist now. In the 1980s, it did not exist.
That's really interesting. That's interesting, and that's really useful because I think this whole idea of transitioning a much broader public that isn't really familiar with all the good reasons for being vegan, that's such a great tool for you to be able to transition them, knowing the kind of things they like with classical dishes, and to maybe duplicate that in something new that doesn't have the animal products. So let me get this straight. So you go through high school, you're vegan, you're vegetarian, and
we're kind of pescatarian, ovo-vegetarian, but ovo-vegetarian who ate shellfish.
Okay. Yes. And how did you find that socially? Did people hassle you at all, or did you kind of just ate your own way and it wasn't much of an issue?
I remember when I was about 16 years old, I made a blueberry salsa for like a boyfriend's family for like the Super Bowl or something, and everybody raved over it. So I think everybody was just always really happy that I was willing to do the cooking. I mean, I mastered like an asparagus pilaf and all this stuff. So I would bring all these dishes, or I would cook these, and my friends were like, "Oh my God, you're such a good cook," you know,
Cool.
not realizing that there just weren't. And of course, remember now, I was still doing the shellfish, so a lot of things I threw shrimp into at that point. I threw langostinos or, you know, crabs or something.
Gotcha.
So I used a lot of that. So everybody loved my food and just thought I was an amazing cook. When I got out of culinary school, I realized there was absolutely no job I could do that I felt comfortable doing. And let me say, part of culinary school is learning how to butcher and cut all the cuts of meat and everything else. So, I did all that. I got straight A's and I graduated. But when I got out of culinary school, I realized I can't find a job doing anything remotely that I'm comfortable doing. So I actually went and got additional degrees. I ended up with a bachelor's degree in psychology. I got a bachelor's degree in comparative religions. I got a master's degree in education.
Damn, Susan.
Yeah, I know, right? So I did a lot of other work outside the culinary world, teaching, health and nutrition. I worked as a weight loss counselor. I worked as a cooking instructor, so I did a lot of other things, but never really could find something that I absolutely loved doing. And for a long time, up until I was in my early 30s, I actually was still an ovo-vegetarian. Okay, so I still ate eggs until I was like 31. And then I realized I'm just being incredibly lazy. And I took a month out of my life and I went into the kitchen. I redid all my recipes, I taught myself how to use egg substitutes, everything from arrowroot, to flaxseed, to applesauce, to mushed bananas, to, so I taught myself how to not use egg. And that was finally in my 30s. But up until I was 35, I still worked for the family farms. We had racehorses, and I still worked with racehorses. I still rode horses. I still showed horses, so I did all that till I was 35. I had a awakening one day where I said, why am I racing horses? It's kind of hypocritical to not eat cows and at the same time basically be very heavily involved in an industry that is based on horses making money, and if they don't produce on the racetrack, they end up in the slaughterhouse for dog food, or they break their legs, and they're pumped full of drugs to run. They're treated oftentimes cruelly by different trainers. And there was a point where I was at a racetrack and a trainer that I did not know was beating the heck out of a horse. And I ran up behind him and I grabbed his arms and I pinned him. And I thought, but I'm part of this industry.
Wow.
And so that was kind of my awakening, was why am I still doing that? And this was the 90s. When was I 35? I was 35 15 years ago. So 15 years ago. So up until 15 years ago, I was still heavily involved in the racehorse industry. I was still eating shellfish. I had taught myself how not to use egg. But at that point, I realized I had learned the word vegan. And even though I had bristled at the thought of, and as hypocritical as this sounds, I had bristled at the thought of not being able to drive a car with leather seats or wear leather boots. Because remember, I rode horses, so I had to have leather boots, and I had to have a leather saddle, and I had to have leather bridles. So I thought to myself, what am I doing? It doesn't matter that I don't eat meat. I'm still buying all these leather products, and I'm still heavily involved in an industry that is based on the exploitation of horses. And that was my awakening moment, and I said I can't run Racehorse Farm anymore. And I ran off to the Caribbean, and I became a chef on yachts, private luxury yachts.
Wow.
And I started really working on plant-based diets, and I got a lot of really good, wealthy clients who were willing to hire me to make them vegetarian vegan food while traveling on yachts. And of course, I had that whole seafood background down, so I was
Right.
really good at that. But I said, I'm gonna try, So when I first started as a yacht chef, I was actually just doing all plant-based plus the seafood. I wasn't eating it anymore, but I knew how to cook it properly. So I was doing that for clients. And within 6 months, I had built up enough of a following of being able to produce fabulous fruit and veggie dishes, smoothies. I quite a few movie stars and country music stars and everything, just started working or chartering yachts. And I just kind of got a reputation, and people started requesting me. And so
Let
I
me
started
ask you,
developing
Susan, how did you like that lifestyle? I imagine you spend a lot of time in a tiny kitchen, but would you get some free time on the yacht? Could you go out and catch some rays, or what was it like?
Yeah, I'm not a big sun worshiper. I'd rather be hiking or at the local. The great part of it was that I've been to every island in the Caribbean, and I've been to all the farmers markets, and and I got to taste all the different tropical fruits and veggies, and just so as opposed to laying out on the beach, I'd rather walk the beach for seashells and then go to the local farmers market. So, and I like to swim, and I like to do scuba and snorkeling and stuff like that. So I'm not big on just laying on a deck or anything.
Gotcha.
I get a little bit bored.
Gotcha. All right.
But it was fabulous. It was a wonderful life, is what it was.
All right. Okay. So and let me jump back a little bit. So when you initially went to college out of high school, was that immediately culinary school, or was that okay? So okay, yeah, all right,
yeah,
and that's incredible that you got a degree in comparative religion, psychology. You're a culinary,
and a master's in education.
Wow. All right. Well, maybe we'll talk a little bit about religion and psychology a little bit later. But so one thing I would like you to do for us, could you kind of look back as you made these dietary changes in your eating approach over time? Did you notice any corresponding health changes? Obviously, with the lactose intolerance, that was the first thing that went, and your health must have improved when you stopped doing that. But beyond that, did you notice any changes?
Okay. The great thing about working as a chef in the Caribbean was because up to that point, my decisions were my personal decisions based on ethics. But working as a chef in the Caribbean, what I learned doing this, because a lot of, like I said, movie stars, high industry executives from Hollywood, Nashville music stars, all of those would come to the Caribbean and they'd request basically vegan, plant-based foods.
Wow.
What I learned was, they may go out in public and they may order a steak and they may cut it up into pieces and push it around their plates. But what most of them knew, because their doctors had told them the truth, is that a plant-based diet was the healthiest diet that they could eat.
Now,
So
that is surprising. That's surprising to hear. You think of country and western singers as big advocates of a cattle ranching kind of lifestyle,
And that's why I said maybe when they go out to public, and go to a steakhouse in Nashville, they're going to cut up that steak and they may eat one or two bites and they move it around their plate. But what they're going to basically eat is at home they will have done a plant-based kale smoothie that morning, and for lunch they would have had a light salad, and then they go out to eat and they have to put up a show. But most of them, the doctors have told them the truth. The people who have to exercise every day and stay in shape because they're on camera or on their film or they're getting pictures taken or the paparazzi, the doctors have told them the truth. And I've often wondered if there's a higher level of doctor that, the average person, the average American who eats the standard American diet, who's 40, 50 pounds overweight, they go into their doctor's office. The doctor doesn't tell them, you need to change how you eat. You need to go plant-based. No, the doctor throws medicine at them for their cholesterol, their high blood pressure, And in passing, they may say, oh, well, you could lose a couple pounds. But I don't think they tell them the truth. Whereas I think there's a higher level of doctor in Hollywood or Nashville who sees these stars, who sees the people and tells them the truth and says, plant-based diet is what's going to keep you looking the youngest, going to keep you feeling the most energetic, because let's be honest, they go out and they tour, they're on movie sets 12 hours a day. They need energy. They need to look young. They need to stay trim. So there's a subset of doctors out there, I think, somewhere who have told these people the truth, which is you need to eat a vegan diet. And that's what really opened my eyes in the Caribbean, was all these people that you would not expect from Hollywood or music stars, who wanted me to make vegan food for them. And so I started really researching the health benefits, and I got into reading everything from, oh gosh, there's so many good ones out there. I mean, from the China study to How Not to Die by Dr. Greger. I mean, just great books, but really learning, and that's where I started teaching myself the nutrition. So I jokingly say that I gave myself a master's degree in nutrition, just because, I mean, you can look behind me right here. These are all cookbooks. Okay. Everything here is a cookbook. Wow. I probably have 2,000 cookbooks and nutritional books.
All right.
So,
all right.
How Not to Die by Dr. Greger. This
Great.
I make everybody read this. Oh my gosh, by Dr. Michael Greger, MD.
Well,
everybody
let me ask you,
to...
since you're on this point, Susan, there's a huge topic, kind of a lot of debate goes on in our community about this. As I'm sure you're aware, there's been this kind of tremendous growth and interest in what might be called a paleo or a primal dietary approach to health. And I'd be interested to hear your experience with this, with folks who have maybe tried this and not been able to make it work. And have you also, on the other side of the coin, have you had any folks over the course of your history that have said, look, I've tried a vegan diet, it's just not working for me? And how would you address those two issues?
Okay. A vegan diet can work for anybody. If it's not working for you, it's because you're not doing something right yet. I mean, if you can get into vitamin B12 or anything else, drink kombucha, eat nutritional yeast, but even there, our vitamin B12, for us to deplete it out of our bodies would take years, literally. I mean, there have been so many studies that say the whole vitamin B12 thing is kind of a myth. It's kind of the excuse, the last refuge to hold on to. I think, okay, you said there's a shift to eating based on health, and I see that. And so some of the problems are with the Hollywood people. There's a couple that have gone vegan. Let's use Beyonce. But she still wears fur and leather. I prefer that they call them plant-based. So there is a movement toward eating a plant-based diet. They haven't adopted the vegan ethics. I leave the word vegan for somebody who does it for ethical reasons, does not believe that we have any right to exploit the animals that are here with us, not for us. So the whole purpose, people say to me, well, what's the purpose of a cow being born if it's not to either die for food or for milk? And I say, how about the cow's just born to be a cow? You don't question why a snake is born. A snake is born to be a snake. A monkey is born to be a monkey. A cow is born to be a cow. They're not born with a purpose for us.
Yeah. Very great point. Very strong point. Yeah.
Yeah. So the word vegan to me implies an ethical stance first. I'm a vegan because I'm ethical and believe in that for the animals, that the animals are our equals, that we're all earthlings here together. Okay, so anybody who doesn't adopt the vegan ethics but eats a plant-based diet should be called plant-based. Because if they truly adopt the vegan diet, then they're not going to go to SeaWorld, they're not going to go to rodeos, they're not going to have snakes in a tank in their living room, they're not going to have fish in a tank in their living room, they're not going to wear leather, they're not going to buy a car with leather seats, they're going to do their best to minimize their footprint, in which case they are vegans. But if they're just plant-based dieters, I always say, come for the food, stay for the ethics. So as a chef, if you come because you like the food and you like the health benefits, come for the food by all means. I hope you stay for the ethics. I hope you,
Beautiful.
a plant-based dieter is nothing more than a vegan in training. So, if I can get them there for the health benefits of what eating a plant-based diet does, how it extends your life, how it gives you extra energy, how it makes your skin. I mean, I will be 50 in a very short period of time here. In a couple months, I will be 50 years old.
I can relate. I just turned 50 myself, so I can relate.
Wow. So I still get people who go, oh my gosh, you can't be. You look like 35. And I'm like, yeah, right? See? I'm good with that. So I think, that's a big thing is everybody wants to live longer. But not only do they want to live longer, they want to have a good quality of life. And the number one thing a plant-based diet can do for them is give them a good quality of life and really help them ward off diseases. Every single minute of every single day, our bodies are pre-cancerous. Everybody would agree with that, right? Anything can trigger it in your environment, in your food. Maybe there's a genetic susceptibility to it that will be triggered if you eat poorly. Everybody has that anecdotal evidence. Oh, my grandma was 98 years old and she ate 2 slices of bacon and smoked a pack of cigarettes a day. Well, not everybody can do that, okay? And nobody should try to do that. So the truth is, every minute of every day, our bodies are pre-cancerous. So everything that goes in our mouth should be trying to stop cancer from being triggered.
Okay, I love that. I love what you're saying. And on this note, can you kind of bring in this paleo-primal argument a little bit? So a lot of people they're seeing some benefits. Like let's say previously you were a sad diet eater. Let's say you ate a lot of fast food, you ate a lot of fried food, you didn't eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. You ate tons of meat, tons of animal products, and then let's say you gave up grains, you started eating lean meats, you started eating more fruits and vegetables, you're probably going to see some health benefits, right? So
very much so, yes.
So what I'm leading to, of course, is that I think a vegan diet is the most healthy. Can you talk a little bit about why some people might be experiencing benefits with a paleo-primal approach?
Of course, because they've gotten away from just eating whatever's in front of them and eating the standard American diet and drive. So, of course, there's going to be benefits. They're going to feel better off. They're going to lose weight. They're going to have more energy. They're going to go work out their gym, and they're going to say, I feel wonderful. And I'm saying going vegan is just going to ramp that up even higher. It comes down to, even though lean meats are still better than heavily fat saturated meats, they're still better than. The better than is still relative. Being vegan is still highly better than even eating the lean meats. Your pea proteins, your beans, your rice, all those proteins are far better for you than even the lean meats. And they're more easily digestible. And how I explain that to people, they're like, oh, but I need, 50, 60 grams of protein. And I say, yes, but let me explain the difference between meat protein and plant protein to you. Let's just use even numbers so that it makes sense. Let's say you eat 100 grams of a animal protein. The protein, and what we're talking about, when we say protein, what we're truly talking about is amino acids. The amino acids in animal proteins is in a complex that is so tightly bound that by the time your body digests and unravels that animal protein and it's absorbed in your gut, which we'll get into gut health in a second, but the moment it's absorbed in your gut, maybe out of that 100 grams of animal protein, your body can only efficiently utilize 50 grams because of the way it's bound and how your body has to digest it and to upload the nutrients. Whereas 100 grams of an easily digestible plant protein, you take it into your body, it hits your intestines, it's broken down quickly and efficiently, maybe 95 grams out of that 100 plant proteins, amino acid grams, is utilized by your body. So in effect, eating 100 grams of plant protein is not like eating 100 grams of animal protein. You eat 100 grams of animal protein, you may only get 50 grams. You eat 100 grams of plant protein, you're going to get 95 grams.
Yeah, not to mention, Yeah, not to mention that with that plant protein, you're also getting a boatload of nutrients that you won't get in the meat. You're also getting fiber, water content. So yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And then to go with gut health, everybody says you are what you eat. Well, a better way of saying that is you are what your body actually digests and absorbs. Because to have a truly healthy gut, your body should be digesting, absorbing those nutrients, and pushing the waste product out immediately. If somebody's only going to the toilet for a number two once a day or once every other day or once every 3 days, there's something seriously wrong with their intestines. And their intestines are probably so coated that their body's not even beginning to absorb the correct nutrients. So that's why a lot of times when people do a fast or a cleanse and they clean out their intestines, they feel so much better and their skin gets better and they have energy and everything else. It's because their gut is actually starting to work again and absorb nutrients. So eating a plant-based diet is going to send not only good things through your gut, but it's going to keep your gut in a manner that can easily absorb all those great nutrients, whereas meat does not do that. There's a reason that colorectal cancer is in such a rise, and that's because of all these horrid, first meat-heavy diets, fat-heavy diets, and all these, artificial ingredients and chemical products and everything else just sitting there in the gut day after day, rotting and not efficiently moving through the gut.
Okay.
So whereas you eat... Mm-hmm.
Let me throw in another topic here, which is kind of related to this, and it's like a big, big movement, this gluten intolerance. So of course we know that people who have the extreme version of that, if they eat any kind of gluten, they'll have a severe reaction. I forget the name of that, but
celiac disease.
Right, celiac, right, which is relatively uncommon. That's not very common. But apparently this gluten intolerance has become tremendously common, and maybe you can talk a little bit about how much you think that's a real thing, how much has that affected your cooking, and what's your take on grains and why this has happened?
Okay. Gluten, not a bad thing, just not meant to be eaten to the way that it is in the standard American diet. Gluten is added to so many products now, which is insane. So just simplifying your diet, going down to a fruit, vegetable, nut, seed, herbs, and spice diet. 6 things. Fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices. That's what I tell people. Start there. So going down, cleaning out the gut, getting things going. People have a gluten sensitivity, and it's causing gas and bloating and everything else. You're right. Not many people have full-blown celiac disease, but here's what people have. They have irritable bowel syndrome. They have diverticulitis. They have all these other things, and they find that it's exasperated, that they have their problems when they eat gluten products. Well, it may not actually be the gluten. It may just be the body being bombarded with so many other things that by the time that they cleanse, they clean out their gut, they go to fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices for at least 30 days. Their gut's working effectively. They're eating some fermented foods. They're rebuilding the good probiotics and stuff in their stomach. Then you can reintroduce true gluten back in and see if there really is a sensitivity.
Okay, let me ask you, have you in your personal experience known folks who were previously gluten intolerant and then after changing diet and recovering, they were then able to eat, say, whole wheat products?
Yes.
Okay.
But I also recommend sprouted whole wheat products, so sprouted breads. So it's the grains, but they've been sprouted. So they've been soaked, they've been allowed to sprout. Then once they're sprout, they're mushed, they're dried, and then they're used to make grains. So there's 2 really good bread products out there, the Ezekiel breads, which everybody knows, and then Alvarado Street has a really great sprouted vegan bread, and that one's actually my favorite one. So I have known, and I've worked with, probably almost 30 clients now just in my small practice who once they have gone vegan and gone really simplified fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices for at least 30 days, introducing back in the mock vegan meats made of seitan, which is vital wheat gluten, in small amounts, they've had no problems.
Ah.
So it's just a matter of cleaning out, resetting the body, and they'll find out. What's really missing from our diets, too, are the fermented foods. So I found that if somebody's drinking kombucha and eating a plant-based diet, and eating kimchi and anything, something fermented.
Coleslaw, yeah.
Yeah, they're really not having small amounts of mock meats made out of vital wheat gluten have no effect on them, whereas they used to be gassy and bloated and have celiac and all this other stuff. It's a matter, I think, of resetting their bodies back
It's
and going
interesting.
plant-based.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the elements of this is this idea that the intestinal lining becomes inflamed and openings become created where nutrients would not normally be able to pass through. And then when these openings exist, whatever goes in there, it ends up being perceived as a toxin by the body because it's not being processed in a nutritional way. It's not being processed biochemically like it should be in the intestine. It's just going into the bloodstream. So.
Right. What I've found is if people lose weight from their midsection, so the upper belly and the lower belly, once they've gone plant-based and they lose the weight right in there, and I call it wheat belly, but once they lose that weight right in there, the vital wheat gluten mock meat products don't seem to affect them. Now, again, I believe in moderation. I personally eat mock meat made out of vital wheat gluten in very small amounts and maybe only twice a week. There's no reason to have mock meats at every single meal,
Yeah.
But I have worked with clients now who, once they have dropped that initial 15 to 40 pounds just in belly fat, they don't have the gluten problems that they always thought they did.
Very interesting. Now, my impression of mock meats, and I don't know if you would categorize tofu in that same category, but it seems that these are probably useful foods for people who are transitioning from a animal product diet, but in general, they're not ideal. When you compare them to more natural foods like plants, the less processing, the better, right?
Right. Oh, and I don't disagree with that. I have no issue with tofu. I actually really like tofu, but again, all things in moderation. Nobody should be drinking soy milk plus soy smoothies every day, plus putting on their cereal, plus eating tofu 2 meals a day. I mean, that's just overkill. If you're going to eat food, you eat tofu 2, 3, 4 times a week max. You drink oat milk or almond milk or coconut milk. I don't recommend soy milk just in general, mostly because most soy milk tends to be GMO, but unless you buy the specifically organic stuff. But oat milk is my favorite. I have switched more people to oat milk, OAT, oat milk.
Okay. I use rice milk.
Rice milk's not bad either. I sure like my horchata, so I mix rice milk with some cinnamon and some vanilla, and that's how I drink it. Most people don't find it creamy enough. They find it too watery.
Okay.
So the oat milk really has some substance to it.
Thickness, yeah.
Right, and so people who like the dairy and like the milk tend to transition really well into oat milk. And it's relatively easy. It's easy to find. It's easy to digest. It's naturally gluten-free. So, because oat is a gluten-free grain. So oat milk on your cereal, oat milk in your smoothies, that's where you should be.
Okay. All right. Now, you kind of touched on this, but let me just double down a little bit on it. You talked briefly about B12. You think it's kind of overemphasized. Do you personally take a B12 supplement?
I do not.
Okay.
I was looking. Hold on. This is my kombucha bottle.
Okay.
So it's GTS kombucha, and it has. I noticed this the other day. It's actually got 20% of the recommended daily allowance of B12 in it just by drinking a bottle of kombucha.
Huh, okay.
So I drink kombucha pretty much daily, and I use nutritional yeast. The other thing is, I honestly believe, it comes from dirt. you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you know, if you've got an organic garden out in your backyard, or if you're a container gardener, or you know, you just leave a little dirt on your mushrooms and your carrots and throw them in your smoothie and eat it. It's fine,
there
you
you
know.
go.
So I tend not to wash my vegetables crazy like my homegrown ones,
Yeah,
and ones from like the farmer's market to a certified organic farmer that I really like buying stuff off of. You know, I don't necessarily wash the heck out of my vegetables. I'm kind of
gotcha.
okay with getting some dirt in my system. I
Uh,
look at it this way: our ancestors used to eat a lot of dirt. You know, they saw nothing if they were out working a potato field. They saw nothing out of pulling out a potato out of the ground, wiping it on their blue jeans, and eating it. You
yeah,
know, and I kind of do.
it's interesting, Susan. I've even seen that it was highly likely when our waterways were clean that there was lots of B12 running in the water because it was in the
Right.
soil, you know. But it's very interesting. So I take it. Is there any other supplement that you think is useful? For example, vitamin D.
Um, Obviously, I'm a very pale-skinned Scottish chick. Um, but I still try and get my vitamin D naturally from sunshine. I don't think you should slather, you know, tanning oils and stuff onto you, but I certainly think you should go out and hike 10, 15 minutes a day with your arms exposed up to your shoulders and your face free. And, you know, you don't have to go get a tan, you know, because tanning leads to wrinkles and skin cancer and everything else. But 20 minutes of good vitamin D straight from the sunshine every day certainly is not going to hurt you. And it can't hurt, might help, and actually improves your mood.
That's
So, and
interesting.
then lots of mushrooms are good.
Okay, okay.
But
You,
vitamin D comes from mushrooms.
you know, I'm kind of the opinion, and it's certainly not based on any studies that I'm familiar with, but that really most skin cancer is being created by improper foods being eaten, which are then processed and eliminated through the skin. And so it's not so much excessive sun that is causing people's skin cancer, but rather dietary indiscretion, if you will. You know.
And not only that, it's the chemicals they put on their skin. You know, the people who really get see a high incidence of skin cancers are the people who also slathered tanning oils on them and went out and laid on the beaches for an hour and a half, you know.
Yeah.
I've always been very careful to wear hats, even when I worked in the Caribbean and everything else. You know, I shielded my face. I put on natural sunscreens, and there are a lot of natural sunscreens out there now. You know, ones that don't harm our environment, don't harm the coral reef. They do actually exist. So if people are going on vacation or anything and they're going to be scuba diving or snorkeling, they need to buy sunscreens that actually aren't harmful to the environment.
Right.
So it's, you know, I've just always been really careful about my skin. But the other thing is I don't slather, you know, lotions or I haven't worn perfume in probably 20 years, you know.
A
You know,
natural girl.
I just think you put chemicals all over your body, and then you wonder why your body rebels. You know, I mean, my deodorant's like aluminum free and, you know, natural deodorants and everything else. And the body was made to sweat. You know, we can master deodorant, or the odors, but we should do it naturally. So when you wonder why women have breast cancer, and I've just always felt like it's because they're putting bad deodorants right there next to their breast, you know.
Very
and I always
interesting.
wondered, what about those glands, you know?
Very interesting.
So
Yeah.
I just think everything's tied to anything. The skin is actually the body's biggest organ. And it's a known fact that what you put on your skin can be absorbed through your skin. So I've always been really careful what I put on my skin.
Great points. You kind of made me think of a question that you probably know the answer to since you were in the Caribbean for so long. You know, you hear, or at least I've heard, kind of a horror story about these cruise ships, these big cruise ships, and what they do with their waste. How does that work on yachts, and do you have any knowledge of how it works on some of those big cruise ships? Does a lot of this stuff get dumped right into the ocean?
The food waste does, yes, very much. Even the big cruise ships dump their food waste out there. Now I've been in ports where I've seen tender boats bringing in bags of garbage from cruise ships. So I know they're brought into port, but food items tend to get thrown overboard easily. And then, of course, wastewater tends to get churned out in deep ocean. They get rid of their human waste.
Okay, gotcha.
Which, yeah.
Yeah.
Which
yeah.
there are standards that they have to follow to not chemically overtreat, obviously with things. But like cans and bottles and stuff, that is tendered to shore.
Well, that's good. That's good. Okay, so let's see. Is there anything else? Are there any topics you'd like to throw in? Because I've had you about an hour. I guess one of the things that you probably would have some good advice on is for folks who are thinking about undertaking this diet. They may think it's overwhelming. I'm used to cooking this old way. How am I going to cook this way? What tips might you have for someone who's just coming into this?
Everything is a learning curve. Obviously, people say, well, I started to cook and it was difficult and I couldn't cook that way. Well, think back when you were 9, 10, 11, 12, or when you first started cooking, maybe in college or after you got your first apartment. It took time to figure things out. You're not going to be a great vegan chef overnight. But it's a lot simpler now because, like, I have a Facebook page where I've posted 1,000 recipes that are simple and easy and anybody can go in and make them. I answer questions on my Facebook page. If somebody writes me a question, I won't guarantee that I'll answer them in 15 minutes. So don't call me if you've got something cooking on the stove and need an answer right now. But, if you have a question, they can certainly post it on my Facebook page, and I try and get everything answered within, 3 to 5 days. Eating vegan is so easy. Now, let me tell you about the dark ages, 20 years ago, when the only vegan food was tofu. That was it, tofu and soy milk. And everybody says, how'd you do it back then? And I said, well, there was always a produce department, Or somebody says, I've never had vegan food. And I'm like, really? You've never had an apple? Are you serious? So make it a lot simpler. I personally try and do my best to eat at least 80% raw. A lot of days I'm 100% raw. So 2-3 days out of every week I'm 100% raw. And then rice and beans tend to be the only thing that I don't eat technically that's raw. So it's very simple. It'll cut down on your number of dishes, and just try simple things. So really sit down and identify dishes you like, and then look for their vegan versions. But don't try to make vegan tiramisu your first week. Stick with starting to learn the salads, how to make hummus, things that are simple. Make vegan tacos. Make yourself a vegan pizza. Learn the simple things. And then just every week, add 2 new dishes to your repertoire that you're comfortable with, and eventually it'll all fall into line. Beautiful. And in the meantime, there is absolutely nothing wrong with living on smoothies 3 times a day. Because let's be honest, look in the mirror. I don't know anybody other than, serious gym rat who can't afford to lose 10, 15 pounds. So even if you want to transition but you don't have time to really teach yourself to cook, there is nothing wrong with living on a smoothie 3 times a day for the first week or 2 of being vegan until you start figuring out how to, make some meals. But by all means, take all the bad stuff out of your pantry, take it down to your local food pantry, and donate it. Just get it out of your house.
I like that.
Because as long as it's there, it's going to be a temptation. I guarantee you can't eat bad stuff if there's not bad stuff in your house. So the simplest thing I can say, the biggest thing of advice, if it's not in the house, you won't eat it. And then Beautiful. I live in a world where fast food restaurants do not exist. It's the world I've created for myself, but I'm blind to them. So just make a list and mentally say, I am never going to another McDonald's. I'm never going to another Wendy's. I'm never going to this. I'm never going to that. And eventually they will cease to exist. I haven't been in a fast food restaurant in over 10 years, over a decade. And the last time I went, it was because I was with a friend who had to get something to eat, and I ended up eating a 99-cent salad from one of those places, but I'm not even sure which at this point. But that was 10 years ago. I mean, it's been 10 years. The other thing is get the sodas, the refined sugars out of your diet. They're the most detrimental thing. They feed cancers. They feed your obesity. They feed everything else. I haven't had a soda in 10 years, 10 plus years. So just that you got to live in a world where they cease to exist. And the number one cause of fatigue, most people don't know this, is actually dehydration. People who feel tired or feel fatigued are actually dehydrated. Drink water. Water is awesome. Drink lots and lots of water. You'll have more energy. You'll feel full, so you won't feel like you need a snack. Your skin will look beautiful and radiant and glowing. So just go back to the basics. Fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, herbs, spices, and water.
Beautiful.
You can survive on it. It's awesome.
I love it, Susan. Thank you. I've got two more issues. One, just could you've told us already a little bit about some folks who have recovered from gluten intolerance. I imagine in your experience you've probably seen some pretty amazing health recoveries. Can you share with us one or two that where some folks really overcame some difficult health issues by going vegan?
Sure can. People who get a diabetes diagnosis, they fall into two categories. They're either going to say, hey, the doctor said I have diabetes and I'm going to be on these pills the rest of my life, and they just wander off and they take the pills the rest of their life and they accept it. And then you get these other people who go, I got diabetes, how can I get rid of this? And they start seeking. And it's so nice when they stumble onto me or somebody else who's going to show them through nutrition how to reverse diabetes. YouTube is there. Type in Google. I love the people who found out they had diabetes and they immediately Googled reverse diabetes. You want to know how to reverse diabetes? Go vegan. Lose weight. Start exercising. Eat the right things. So, yeah, I've actually seen some really remarkable things. I've had people obviously get off high blood pressure medicine, get off cholesterol medicine, reverse their diabetes. It is possible. I promise you. And while I hate to make any kind of blanket statement, and anything I say is not to be taken as, instead of a doctor, I've actually seen two people. I've been very fortunate to see two people personally who received cancer diagnoses. Both of them started juicing, and these were 5 years apart, but both of them started pretty much the same thing. They both juiced, they both went vegan, and both of them beat cancer. So I know all cancers are different and the stages are different, and I'm just saying these are people who caught it early enough. And, there's a great book. Hang on. So even something like this, there's tons of books. Like this is the Cancer Prevention Diet.
Beautiful.
Okay?
Okay.
So, anyhow, so there's tons of books out there that show diet to fight cancer, and most of them will say you've got to get your body alkaline, you've got to start juicing, So I think the people who, when given a diagnosis, fight that diagnosis and believe that they can fight that diagnosis have a far better chance. But no matter what the diagnosis, the key is going vegan.
Beautiful.
Vegan. I say vegan instead of plant-based. They go plant-based in their diet, but they go vegan, and it actually gives them drive and something to believe in and have that uplifting of spirit of saying, I'm making a difference for animals. So I also think it gives them that other drive too. But by all means, if they're not going to go ethical vegan, going plant-based will turn around a health problem and a health crisis faster than anything else I know.
Fantastic. And lastly, Chef Susan Hunter, could you share with the viewers your website, blogs, any books you want to refer people to? Just tell us how to contact you, maybe an email address if that's cool.
Okay, email address is real simple. It's vegan.chef@yahoo.com.
Okay, good.
Now, I jokingly say, because everybody always asks me for my website and my blog, I always tell people that I don't have time to blog and run a website because I actually work for a living. I would rather be teaching a client how to cook than writing a blog about it.
Love it.
So I try and stay really, really busy. I don't have a website per se, but I do have a Facebook page. And if they search for Chef Green V is in Victory, So Chef Green V on Facebook. It should bring up my page, and there's a lovely picture of me as the profile pic. It's a page, so they have to like it, and then they can click on photos, click on albums. They can find all my recipe albums. The Facebook page is actually www.facebook.com/greenvees, VEES. So Green Vees is the actual URL. But if they just search for Chef Green V, and of course green, and then the V is for vegan. The international symbol for veganism is a green V. If they're at the grocery store and they flip it over, a package over, and there's a green V, that means that it's a certified vegan product. So my company is actually Chef Green V, and that just means certified vegan. I'm on LinkedIn. Just search for Chef Green V or Susan Hunter, and just chef, vegan chef. You can find me on LinkedIn. So yeah, I mean, that's it. I have LinkedIn and Facebook because other than that, I'm cooking, giving lessons, traveling, doing wellness. I do corporate wellness. I do clinics. I do food retreats.
Do you do a personal consultation like on Skype, something like that?
I do. Yes, I do. And I jokingly say that I just, I'm here to listen mostly, because by the time somebody gets me on Skype, it means they're really ready to change. So they just want to tell me their story, and they want somebody to say, you can do this. And that, I mean, that's it. They can do this. Everybody can do this. And if they're ready to change and if they're ready to get healthy, then I am here to encourage them and give them every bit of point and advice. But yeah, I do Skype interviews also, Skype consultations. And then I love doing corporate wellness and corporate retreats. So that's kind of where I've really got into. I'm pretending to write a cookbook right now. Now I should say I do editing and ghostwriting for other people for their cookbooks. So, and I've been working with 2 different publishers for going on a decade now. So there are cookbooks out there by people who I have edited or ghostwritten or tweaked the recipes. And, I mean, I'm a paid consultant on that, so my name's not necessarily on them, because I'd rather, they got out there. And I understand that celebrities will get somebody to buy their cookbook more than, Susan Hunter will. So I'm more than happy to take my consulting check and, ghostwrite a cookbook for someone. But I am attempting to write one right now. I'm kicking it around.
Yeah, that's great. Since you've been doing this, you've had the perfect preparation, so you know how the whole thing operates. It's great.
Right. And I do demos and I do trade shows. So if anybody has a vegan product and they, wanted a good demo chef for like Natural Food Expo East or West, I'm the demo chef that does that. I'll stand up there for 8 hours and tell people why this is a fabulous vegan product. So I do all kinds of different things. Yes.
All right. Well, Chef Susan Hunter,
that's why no blog. I'm too busy.
I like it. Chef Susan Hunter, thank you so much for your time and inspiration. Did you lose?
Thank you. Thank you for asking me. I can't wait to see this.